Good evening. I am Claire Springer with the SchoolRubric team, and we are excited to have Brian Hunt with us from Socrates Head of School. Socrates Head of School is an organization that conducts and publishes book distillations, essentially book reviews and analysis, with the goal of using this information to inform and improve professional practices in schools. Today, we are here to talk about the best-selling book, Linchpin by Seth Godin, and some key takeaways for both teachers and administrators. Brian, it's so great to have you here with us this evening.
Glad to be here, Claire.
So let's start with the obvious, Brian. What exactly does Seth Godin mean when he uses the terminology linchpin?
Yeah, great question. So Seth Godin, what he means is that a linchpin is someone who has made themselves indispensable to an organization or a business. These are the kind of people that are hard to find. They're worth finding and they're worth keeping around. They bring humanity and connection and their own unique art to the organization they are a part of. And it's kind of the kind of people that no one else can really tell them how to do their job. Their job kind of boils over what their job description is because they bring this certain element that no one else brings to the organization.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you for sharing that. I love how you mentioned hard to keep around. You know, retaining and recruitment is so challenging. So when you find those educators that are linchpins, you definitely want to retain their skill set in your building. And before we move on to the next question, Brian, we just want to remind everyone to click on like and subscribe below to keep up to date on our latest videos and content from SchoolRubric and leading voices in education like Brian himself from around the world. Brian, are you ready for question 2?
Let's go.
Let's talk about being a linchpin from the context of education in schools. What would some of the characteristics of a linchpin educator be, and how might they bring value to a school community, and in what ways will they challenge or maybe frustrate the status quo?
Yeah, a lot of great questions there. So for starters, what is a linchpin educator? They are people who are adaptable, they're curious, they lean into discomfort, they seek out problems and push through difficulty. They're generous with their gifts, they're generous with their time, and they're very intentional with all of the words that they use, the things they the committees they are a part of, the various activities that any school has. They're very generous with their time and intentional with it. And also they bring a growth mindset. They practice and develop a growth mindset and kind of learn through failure instead of just trying to be perfect and up to spec right out the gate.
I love that, having that growth mindset and practicing so many of those just qualities and pushing that positive energy throughout a building can really be contagious. So it's one thing to think about having the value of a linchpin educator in your school to move your organization forward. But it's another thing, Brian, to actually identify these individuals as part of the hiring process, which we know as professionals is so important. How can school leaders recruit, encourage, promote, and retain indispensable linchpin educators who solve problems, innovate, and practice the art of teaching and learning?
Yeah, I think Godin really can, when you apply this to schools, there's really 4 main things that schools can do to both attract linchpins and keep them around. Number 1 is be honest. Every school now has a website with a mission statement, a vision statement, but be honest. Like who are you really wanting to be as a school? I mean, truthfully, not every school wants linchpins. Linchpins can be thorns in people's sides sometimes, right? They're always questioning, they're always trying to do new stuff. So if that's not really what you're about as a school or a school community, that's not your culture, be honest about that. But if you're seeking out linchpins, if you want people who are going to push the envelope and kind of bring an innovative spirit to your school, put that on your website. That definitely attracts those linchpins to come and be a part of the organization. Once they're there, I think one of the things that you can do is make sure that the practices in your school actually match up to the mission and vision you have. This is one of the hardest things because you have to have buy-in from all of the teachers, from all of the administrators, and these administrators and teachers have to partner together to really communicate well to students and parents what they mean by their vision and mission. And in the classroom, you should be able to walk into a classroom kind of any given day and see, wow, like that definitely speaks to exactly what our school is trying to do. So make sure you have an honest mission and vision. Make sure your practice matches up with what you say you're trying to do. Then encourage and motivate linchpins to be critical thinkers, to be problem solvers. And one of the things I'd love to tell this story about one of my former heads of upper school. I came to his office one time. It was my first year working with him. It was my first year at the school. And I was like, hey, Mark, I got this project idea I'm trying to do for sophomores, world history. What do you think I should do? And his response totally threw me off. He was like, what do you think? And I was like, what? And he was like, what do you think? What do you think you should do? What did your gut say? And I was like, I didn't even know how to speak that language. I was like, oh, well, I was kind of thinking this, and this. And he goes, that sounds awesome. Yeah, try it out. If it doesn't work, reflect on that, make some tweaks, and change it and do better next time. And what happened was that kind of bore itself out time and time again over the next several years that we worked together. And what he showed me day in and day out was that he wanted me to be unique. He wanted me to bring my gifts to the table as an educator, and not just to kind of be a cog in the system and do what he thought everyone should do. Instead, he understood that by kind of tapping into all of the linchpins you might have in your school and letting them do their thing, that magnifies what one person, even a really great administrator, can do for the school. And so you want to really reward linchpins by encouraging them, by rewarding them, and the message gets sent. It's very clear. Those who aren't linchpins get kind of freaked out by all of that, and they either want to kind of leave the school, or they kind of lean into that discomfort and say, how can I maybe partner with this school to do this cool stuff they're wanting to do?
I love that. One of the key ideas that Seth Godin tries to communicate is that we are all artists, and artists are the innovators, creators, and visionaries in society. This brings to mind a common question among educators as to whether teaching is fundamentally a science or an art. Brian, what's your reaction on that?
Yeah, well, I think if I'm being honest, I think that teaching is both a science and an art. But if I have to lean one way, it's definitely the art side, because I've had a lot of great teachers and worked with a lot of great teachers who can design great lesson plans. That's important. If you're just bringing your art to the school, but you don't actually understand cognitive science, you're not going to get a lot of deep learning accomplished. However, if you come up with the most stellar lesson plan in the world, but you don't have relationships in your classroom, if you don't bring humanity to the classroom, if you don't bring your own flair that no one else can bring, then you're a cookie cutter teacher. And I don't mean that you have to go and destroy yourself and lose boundaries as a teacher. Like, you can do this in a common sense way. It's really just to look in the mirror and say, who am I? Like, when do I feel like I'm experiencing flow? When do I feel like I'm kind of having this buzz about being a teacher? And when do I really see light bulbs go off in kids' eyes? That's the thing you need to be doing more of. And that's the kind of art side, right? Something that no one else can really do but you. And I had a teacher in middle school, Mr. Bailey, and we're talking about rural eastern Oklahoma. And Mr. Bailey, I hated math. I never really enjoyed math throughout school, but he was my middle school math teacher. And I loved coming to Mr. Bailey's class every day. The reason was he was hilarious. He definitely taught me math. I learned a lot of foundational math principles that I used throughout the rest of my schooling. But I didn't come to his class because he knew how to teach math. I came to his class because I knew he cared about me, and I knew that he was funny, and he made me glad to be at school. I mean, if we all bring our art into our classrooms, who we actually are, our little stamp of who we are as a teacher, that's what makes kids come in. And honestly, when we do that, that means we reach different types of kids. You might reach a different type of kid than I am going to. If we're all trying to be the same type of teacher, there's a ton of kids who are going to fall by the wayside and not have any meaningful connections with their teachers. And so I think that while it's both a science and an art, I think you got to bring that art into the classroom.
And digging down deep into your heart and finding those values. What are your core values as an educator? And then how does that transfer into strengths of teaching? And then that develops your culture in your classroom, your skill set as a teacher, and ultimately how you deliver those lessons. So let's go to our next question, Brian. Finding ways to connect and engaging with students so that they pursue more innovative ideas. Innovation is so important. and foster that greater creativity that inspires others. This all of this seems to be a never-ending, question that we're always on the quest for in our educational system. How might framing education in the linchpin student, so transferring it from that teacher perspective to the student, or linchpin learning even context, help train and empower young learners in this regard?
I think that's so key to this whole distillation, the whole idea. And of course, there's a lot to learn as an administrator from this book. And if you go check out our distillation on Socrates head of school.com, you'll be able to see that. But for teachers, to me, this really is a big thing here. Kids know when they're just being told to conform to some sort of idea that the school's trying to get them. You got to be a part of, like, here's the curriculum or whatever. But kids, they start to realize, these students start to realize, what does this have to do with me? Like, where am I in this whole system? Where do I fit in? And when you kind of frame learning as linchpin learning, you're able to show them, hey, you matter. I'm going to tailor your education to you. I want to find out what your gifts are. I want to find out what your strengths are. How are you a linchpin? What is your art? And you can have them practice that now in school. Like, how can you share your art and add value to others' lives now as a kid, as a teenager, as a young adult? But also, by practicing that, they're finding out ways that they can add value and take their own art and add value to the world when they're adults. And in our ever-changing world we live in now, honestly, we kind of cut through all the fog, all the smoke, and just say, hey, guess what? I care about you. I want you to be successful and fulfilled and happy and joyful, experience purpose. And to do that, it's not just about learning what jobs are out there. It's about learning who are you? What can you bring to the table? And if you meet with them, of course, you can have a lot of really spontaneous interactions with kids in the halls and common spaces. And I think that's so important to have those authentic sort of conversations, but also be more intentional in your classes about creating one-on-one conference, or even through distance learning now, one-on-one Zooms with kids. And don't just talk about your class, right? I love to lead off with, hey, what's your biggest stress right now? Or, hey, tell me something you're jacked about right now. What are you excited about? What gets you super excited right now? And they're normally like, you want me to talk about how history or humanities excites me? I was like, it excites me, but no, when when you have this sort of free moment, what are you doing? What are you seeking? What are you Googling? And normally they'll tell you something, and then you're like, that's awesome. You ask some questions, and they're just like so floored about, wow, that teacher wants to know who I am. And you're able to use that collectively throughout the year to really tailor their learning to them and say, I really think here's a strength, and here's one way that if you lean into this, you can grow in this area. And then not only will that bring you fulfillment now, that'll actually prepare you to fit into our ever-changing world when you're an adult. And that's really being a linchpin. It's being one of a kind. It's being indispensable. And if you teach them as a teenager, how cool is that? No one taught me to do that when I was a teenager, but to empower young adults to be able to go into college and go out of college, and they already have that kind of in their mind. I'm indispensable. I have things I can add to whatever organization I'm a part of.
That's right. Well, Brian, I've really enjoyed this short but very purposeful conversation with you about how to be a linchpin, not only as a teacher or administrator, but also as a student, how we can empower our students to be linchpins, and as administrators, empower our teachers to be linchpins, and to identify those linchpins in the hiring process, which is so key to recruitment and retaining quality, highly qualified teachers. So, Brian, for all of our viewers, where can they go to find more information about your distillation of Linchpin?
Sure. Yeah. So first off, you can go to SocratesHeadOfSchool.com, and you can see the full distillation on Seth Godin's Linchpin. But you can also see all the other distillations that we've added already. And we add a distillation per week. And so if you can kind of subscribe to our website, and we'll push that out to you via email, whatever distillation we have, and you can see which ones really kind of speak to you or your school. Whether you're a teacher, whether you're an administrator, we have something for you. But also, on our website, you can find out ways that we'll partner with your school to help you ask those great questions and find those great answers to help you push your leading and learning in the direction you want it to go. And then also, you can follow us on Twitter at SocHeadOfSchool. And we have not only weekly updates there, but intermittent stuff that we get geeked about that we want to share with you. But yeah, definitely, there's a lot of stuff to find there, and we would love to have you subscribe.
Perfect. Well, Brian, again, thank you so much. Thank you, Socrates Head of School. We really enjoyed visiting, and we hope to do more. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for watching School Rubric's Distilling Books with Socrates Head of School, where we discuss books and their implications on educational practice. To stay in the know with our latest upcoming panels, interviews, tutorials, and more, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and follow us on social media. Or visit us at SchoolRubric.com.